Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching this. Welcome back to the 94th episode of the Since I Was Young podcast for all things Heart of Midlothian. We do hope you're all good and well after another frustrating weekend for the Jambos. Joining you as always is myself, Ewan Ramsey, and to that end, the frustrated Alan Scrimger. Alan, how are you doing, good sir? You well?
Hi, frustrated.
No way, really?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably the earliest I've ever said that in an episode. But yeah,
Probably the record, what,
just a
like,
wee
was it
bit,
10 seconds in? Aye, fantastic value,
just a wee
fantastic.
bit, just a wee
As you
Oh
all know, for
God.
all you Hearts fans out there, you probably know what we're referring to. Obviously, this week's episode is going to be mainly revolving around the frustrating Edinburgh Derby that was held at the weekend at Tynecastle, first one of the season, which ended in, yet again, a very frustrating 2-2 draw. As I said, that's going to be our talking points for this episode. Obviously, we would usually say that we will do the preview for next week's game, but we are back to international breaks. This is probably the first year that we've actually appreciated international breaks thus far. The me anyway, because I absolutely hate them. But yeah, we will be going into an international break. So basically, what we're going to try and do for next week, instead of being like to take another week off, we're going to do a review of the season thus far. We're planning to hopefully get a few the guests on as well. But if it does fall down to just me and Alan next week, we do apologize as always. So yeah, that's going to be your the podcast for this evening or whatever time you are watching it. So we do hope you enjoy as always. And before we get started, as always as well, if you haven't subscribed to the Since I Was Young podcast via our YouTube, please think about subscribing. And if you want to get in contact with us via our socials as well, on Insta, Twitter, as always, guys, they will be in the description and on screen as always. So we do hope you enjoy this frustrating episode. I think we found our it was a title for this week's was a podcast, Alan. So obviously we'll start with the lineup as always for the derby. For all of you that were there, I can imagine it was a wet one. So as I said, we'll start with the lineup as always. So we obviously had the Clark in goal, uh, followed by a back line of Kingsley, Rose, Kent, and Stubbock, followed by Devlin, Neuenhoff, Vargas, Forrest, Lowry, and our captain, Lawrence Shankland. So to that end, Alan, what were your thoughts and what were your feelings before the derby started? Obviously, as I said, with it being a really horrible day, weather-wise, what were your thoughts on the starting lineup, sir?
Well, I think it's interesting because obviously we didn't do an episode last week due to reasons. But in the Ross County game, we finished or we played some part of that game with a back three,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of worked quite well with the players that we had available.
Mm-hmm.
So I was possibly thinking he might have gone with that against Hibs, just to try and nullify their wide threats and kind of do it that way. And when I saw the lineup, I thought maybe he has done that. Maybe he's playing Forrest as like a fullback, like the wing back, because he's done
Mm.
that before. But when the game started, I was delighted to see that it wasn't that. Not that I don't
Harsh.
like a back three. Yeah, not that I don't like a back three. I just rather Forrest further up the pitch, which obviously we'll get into
Understand, yeah.
later. But no, the lineup itself was a solid one. The only thing, and again, I posted up a few polls on the Twitter page during the week about the game and the build up and stuff. And a lot of people, one of them was, do you start Alex Lowry or do you keep him on the bench as an impact sub? And the majority of people said, keep him on the bench because he's better as an impact sub.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw him starting, I was a bit like, not really sure about that one. I thought it was quite harsh on George Grant for him to be dropped because he's made an impact in the last two games. And played like a proper number 10. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think you know my feelings on Alex Lowry. So it was one of those I was like, not really sure about that one, but obviously, what do I know? Um, so yeah, no, like you said about it in the lead up to the game, like I was out in the morning. I went for my morning run as I tend to do when I can be bothered, and I woke up and it was horrible weather, and I was like, fuck, I need to go out. And I went out for a run and I got absolutely drenched. I ran halfway and walked the rest of the way home. And at that point, that was about 9:30 in the morning or something, quarter to
Mm.
10 in the morning. And it was torrential. And I didn't think the game
Yeah.
would go ahead personally. I thought, okay, the pitch at Tynecastle is obviously state of the art drainage and all the rest of it. But I just felt like it's not going to happen. Like it rained the whole night. And then in the lead up, it was raining constantly as well. But by the time I got home, there was obviously news of pitch is playable, so they're not planning a pitch inspection, which was good because I think if it had been postponed, you're then looking at the prospect of like a midweek Edinburgh derby at Tiny, and
Yeah.
you're just like, where do we fit that in? It's. I was pleased it went ahead. There were a few games in Scottish football that got postponed, so I was pleased that our game kind of went ahead despite it being absolutely horrendous weather for people going.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of go back, was it to the point that you actually made about like Lowry and the Grant being dropped as well? It's just to kind of like sort of throw that your way because obviously I do agree with Grant being dropped. Like you could argue that that's quite harsh as well, and I understand like why you're coming from for Alex Lowry like being more of an impact sub as well, but you could also argue like I mean being the impact sub was it shall we say like against was it Kilmarnock in the quarterfinal, which was an impact like was at that point, and then for the county game as well. I believe he did have an assist as well for the Forest goal. So
Yeah.
arguably as well, you could say that he maybe earned that spot as well. But like not to say that it was right to drop Grant as well, but like arguably you could say that for the last like sort of few games that he did do like enough to earn that spot. No.
Yeah, I think he did enough to earn it, but I think I would put that more at the feet of Alan Forrest. I think he's done fantastically
Oh
well the
yeah,
last few weeks, and certainly has earned his place in the team. Lowry, he does look like a player that's capable, and Naismith's been talking him up constantly, and speaking about how important he can be and his technical quality and all the rest of it, but it might just be me and my simple minded thinking, but I just thought, you know what, he's done well off the bench. He can come in late in the game against Hibs if we're needing
yeah.
something and have a little spark about him because I don't really think there's much of that on our bench as it is,
Hmm.
which is a bit of an issue. But yeah, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say I was unhappy with Alex Lowry starting. I just didn't expect him to.
Hmm. Yeah, no, man. Then that is was quite fair. But from the get go, obviously, like as we'll talk about the game as we go on, but I have to say it was one of the more better derbies that I've seen throughout the last like sort of few years. Like both teams were at the get go. There was early bookings like as well. I believe the first one was like in 4 minutes for Shanklin, like or something ridiculous like that. Both him and Devlin as well. So obviously that was a bit of a shaky, not like sort of shaky in the sense that we were playing bad, but obviously for them too, they would was
Yeah.
have to watch like sort of how they go throughout that to a game as well. But one thing that I did want to actually mention as well, and it was a bit of a controversial one. There was the first yellow card uh, for Will Fish as well. Honestly, God bless that man. But his mum and dad were giving him that name. Um, there was a bit of a controversy that his foul, which he got a yellow card for, there was a few folks saying, like in according to yourself as well, that could have been like a potential red as well on the fill on the Vargas. What were your thoughts on that? Because I was kind of a bit. If it was a red, then you could argue that it was, but on the other hand as well, the yellow that he got, that was probably like the very fine was the margins of a yellow card before like a red. So what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the place to start is to talk about Willie Collum, obviously
Oh, of
everybody's
course, yeah.
favourite referee. I think, like you said, just to go back to the two Hearts yellows, I think they were early.
Mm,
They were both yellow card offences, so like I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they were harsh or whatever, because they were yellows. I think the only thing that kind of gets me about them is that they're so early in the game, and I'm
right,
thinking,
yeah,
do you really have to do that? Like it was literally Devlin's first foul, it was Shanklin's first foul. Can Willie Collum not just have a word and just say, right, it's a derby. I don't want to give you a yellow in the first 10 minutes, but he doesn't
yeah,
even do
mate.
that. He just gives them a yellow,
Of course not.
and they were yellow card offences. So I'm not going to
Yeah,
say he did it wrong, but I just feel like it was maybe a bit early, and it was Willie Collum wanting to get the cards out nice and early. The Willfish one, it's one of those. I watched it real time and I thought it was a red,
mm,
just because he slides in and his foot's high. But maybe the fact that Vargas sort of jumps out the way of it makes it look a bit worse than it was, if that makes sense.
I get you. Yeah,
Even if, the thing is, if Vargas stands still and takes that challenge,
yeah,
that's a leg breaker
yeah.
potentially. It was a bad tackle. Vargas jumping out the way helped him avoid that potential injury. He was down for a little bit of time, but I did. I thought it was. I'm not going to say I thought it was a red, but in real time, I thought it was. Having watched it back a few
Mm,
times more and looked at it kind of after the heat of the moment, if you will. Once I
yeah.
calmed down a bit, I watched it again, and yeah, it was a typical slide tackle in those conditions as well. But I think if such a thing existed as an orange card, I think it was somewhere between a yellow and a red.
Imagine.
That's my vibe. But I mean, it's one of those. I don't know whether just quickly, I don't know whether VAR even had a say about it. I don't know if they told him, possible foul play or whatever. I don't know, because I don't know if VAR up here could do that or whatever. But ultimately, Willie Hall gave him a yellow, and yeah, I think that was fair considering the game itself. Like the
Mm.
last thing, and the thing about it, and this is probably one of the last things I'll say about Willie Collum, you don't want a red card in a derby. Like
Oh no.
in any big game, you don't want to have to send somebody off, because I'm not saying it can ruin the game, but it gives the opposition an excuse if they don't win, or do you know what I mean? And that's something that kind of annoys me a bit, because it's like it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter the size of the game. If it's a red card, it's a red card. And
Yeah.
the Willfish one was probably on the fringes of that for me. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Willfish is a particularly good defender, so I was quite happy that he stayed on the pitch, to be honest with you.
Fair dues, Alan. Fair dues. But yeah, as we said at the start, it was off to a frantic. Was a start like for both teams as well. We hit the post early on from your main man Alex Lowry, which would have been fantastic because like I would have been messaging you for straight away. And as you mentioned him as well, the man on form for the last like sort of few games. Again, one of the better goals I've seen in an Edinburgh derby from Alan Forrest. I'll be honest, Alan, when like much like yourself, when I was watching it in the real time, generally in between that small amount of time from him actually hitting it and then going in that net, when he hit it, I thought, oh, that's fucking away, like genuinely. But to see that go in so beautifully, absolute scenes, and it was almost like in that was a few seconds after he scored, like I genuinely had to take it back because I was about like Alan Forrest, fucking a screamer, absolute scenes. But yeah, the goal
Never, never in doubt.
was never in doubt, absolutely not. But yeah, the goal was absolutely sublime. Yeah.
Oh, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I think, I've kind of been a fan of Alan Forrest for a long time. And I think he's kind of not so much recently because I think fans are starting to actually see what he can bring, but I feel like Alan Forrest fits into that category of one of those squad players that fans don't think is capable or don't think is good enough to be at Hearts.
Yeah,
And
me.
I mean, like, and that no, that's fair. That's absolutely fair because there's a few in the squad that more so last season, not so much this year, but there's a few that are floating around that you go, are you really good enough to be here? And
Mm,
yeah, Alan Forrest has been in that bracket for a lot of people because they fail to see what he actually does that we don't have that somebody else can do, if that makes sense.
yeah.
But I think in recent weeks and months, and I think it's something that Stephen Naismith doesn't get enough credit for that I think he should. There's been an improvement in a lot of players in that team in terms of what they can offer. And I think Alan Forrest is a prime example of that. I think he's an experienced guy as well. I think he's like 27 now, maybe 26, 27,
Thank you.
despite looking a lot younger than that, in my opinion. But yeah, he just seems to have just found something. And I think maybe it's that being given the opportunity and just taking it. And obviously with Oda not being available, being injured, Forrest has kind of come in and done that. And obviously Barry Mackay not being there, Forrest has been that sort of player that you can give the ball to and he'll just run at people. And me, I love a winger that runs at people. And Alan Forrest just seems to be doing that. And he's taking advantage of the minutes that he's getting by saying, well,
Mm.
actually, do you know what? I might not be the best player in the team, but I can do something. I can contribute. And he scored obviously previously, and then he's got a goal against Hibs, which I think I saw in the after sort of match press conference thing. He said it's the best goal he's ever scored, which I don't doubt.
Oh no,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, no, I'm just delighted for Alan Forrest because he has had a lot of critics, and I think a lot of that is unfair to an extent because he's not really played all that much for the critics to be there. I think
I get you. I
it's
get you. Yeah.
I think as well, it's a typical case of like he's a player that's been shunted around in different positions, which is something that our previous managers liked to do. Um, and he's never really had a chance to settle into one area and go, right, this is where I want to play, this is where I can play. And I don't know if Stephen Naismith's just said to him, right, where do you want to play? Like maybe sat down and had a conversation and said, right, where do you think you can play? Like where do we get the best out of Alan Forrest? Maybe that's what's happened. Because as I say, there's a few players that have certainly improved under Naismith, and I think people have been very, very quick to beat Stephen Naismith for different reasons. And I'm not
Mm.
going to sit here and say that I'm not, agreeing with some of those reasons, and I'll probably mention them later. But I think one of the things that he has to be credited with is the improvement in some players like Alan Forrest, Kai Rolls, another one, Natty Atkinson, another one. And that's not just me being biased. I think Natty's improved a lot. We've seen with him not being in the
Yeah.
team. Cammy Devlin, another one, looks to have added
What was
something.
it?
So, but yeah, I think back to Forrest. I think when I said about the starting lineup and stuff, seeing him on the team, I thought, right, do you know what? This is an opportunity for Alan Forrest to do something. I wasn't expecting him to rattle one in from 25 yards out, but
Fucking right, you
we
did.
we we never score shitty goals in a derby. Like we don't score. Like if is it just me, but like maybe people can educate me. But it's always like if we score more than one goal in a derby, at least one of them is always an absolute worldie. Like
100%.
we don't score shit goals. Like it's crazy. I mean, I love it. Don't get me wrong, but I think that again, the biggest annoyance about the Alan Forrest goal is that it wasn't a winning goal, and it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, like you did like what mentioned that as well. Like it is a bit of a shame on him because obviously with the end result and the manner, that goal won't be like sort of remembered as much now, which is
yeah,
like a bit of a shame.
definitely, definitely. But listen, if any man deserves to score a raker like that, it's Alan Forrest. And as I say, hopefully it gets some of the critics off his back, and hopefully some of them realise that I'm not going to sit here and say there's a player in there because I've always said that about Forrest. I love the man. Slight exaggeration there. But I've always had faith that there's a player that can do something. And he's certainly shown the last few weeks that he's capable of doing something. And that obviously was a crowning moment for him.
And I will try my best to have more, more patience as well. And thank you very much for that. But yeah, as that goal was went in, I personally thought that we were for large parts of the game that we were a bit more in the control. I think we dictated it was a tempo of the actual game as well, for all as much as it was a rainy day and everybody was sliding about. I thought we did that. But we obviously wouldn't be a Hearts another podcast without talking about another Hearts injury to a first team key player. So again, for the first half, Kingsley unfortunately went down. I think from what I saw, he was blocking a corner, and I think that's
Mm,
what forced him to go down. It
yeah,
looked like his hammy. I don't know if it actually was or not, but like it
can't
was
remember.
on the inside of his was it leg, so like it could have been his groin as well. Like I'm not too
Mm.
sure. Like there's not really been much updated throughout the game since then. So yes, Alan, that's now the Cochrane and was it Kingsley out of the team now. Yeah, fucking shite, eh?
Aye, it is. It really is. Yeah, it's annoying. It's frustrating. It's irritating. It's all of those things because
Mm-hmm.
I thought Kingsley had a really, really good first half. I thought
Yeah,
he was really, really solid. I thought he was going forward and backwards and doing his jobs and overlapping with Lowry and letting Lowry sort of drift wherever he wanted to go. Because Kingsley was always that left-sided option. He was just always there for a pass, as he has been the last few weeks. Again, a player that's found a bit of form and started to look
yeah.
like the old Stephen Kingsley. But I did. It's going to sound quite harsh, but I quite enjoyed. So he blocks the. I don't know if it's a cross or a corner or whatever, but he
Mm.
blocks the ball coming in, and then the ball just doesn't get put out because it's still in play. And then he jumps up and heads it away, and I'm like, is he okay? Like, is he all right? Like he literally jumped up and headed the ball away to clear it, and then
Literally,
it
I know.
like yeah, like play carried on for a bit, but nobody seemed to be putting the ball out. And then
Ah,
the ball got back. The ball got back to Kingsley, and he's like, "Fuck it, I need to put the ball out myself. Like nobody else is going to do it. I'll put it out myself." It was really weird. It was totally bizarre. Like, I mean,
right?
I applaud him for standing up and heading the ball away. But yeah, it's like, you know what? If you're not feeling it, just go down, and somebody will put the ball out. But nobody did. But yeah, it gives us a massive headache
Hmm.
because we now don't really have any actual fullbacks. like,
Yeah. Now this was it started in was it in Trip Challenge? So what I found bizarre as well, and you can back me up on this. When was it Kings went off on the bench that we had? Who would be your first thought? And it's not just because I've what I think was it he's a legend, but who would be the first player off that bench that you was slotting was on that left hand side?
well, I think it's quite obvious, isn't it? I think it's the
Right,
Andy Halliday show.
right.
Yeah,
And last time I checked, and it's not anything like against well personally, but the last time I checked, we brought in was it All Fire to then was it cover was a Natty Atkinson, yeah?
correct. Yes, correct.
So then my question to you, why did we have to reshuffle that whole back line to essentially was it like accommodate All Fire? Because I don't understand where the like was in terms of just putting a Holiday like in a little left back. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that he's the best left back we've got, but he's played there a numerous amount of times throughout his was the time at Hearts, and he's done was it a job. Like it might not be the most was it glamorous like sort of like a performance, but he does do like a job there. So where do you think the thinking was from Naismith when he put like Ofaya in?
The only thing I can think of, and this is something that obviously people have kind of spoken about Naismith substitutions, and we'll talk about the others after.
Of
But
course.
the the Kingsley injury gave them that dilemma of what to do next, and I think the only logical reason that I can think of that Ofaya was preferred to Halliday was fitness and maybe match sharpness, and maybe thinking, does he have the legs to cope with Martin Boyle on that side?
I
I
mean, who
don't know.
does though?
I really don't know. Yeah, no, I don't know. I think it's a really, really difficult one. And it's one of those questions that if Stephen Naismith was sitting in front of me right now, I'd ask him myself. I'd be like, why? Why was that the substitution? Like,
Mm.
what went through your mind? Because he puts Rolls out to left back, and Rolls has played at left back for Australia, I think once or twice maybe.
Yeah,
And it's purely because Rolls is left footed. That's
yeah,
literally the only reason. So he moves Rolls out to left back. He shuffles Kent across to the left side of defence when Kent is clearly a right sided defender because he plays
right.
next to Rolls.
Mm.
So he shuffles Kent across to the left. He moves Sibic into central defence and he puts Ofaya at right back. Now, if that back four had started the game, I'd be thinking, okay,
Odd.
that's odd. Yeah, that's odd. But I would have probably made peace with it. Like if Kingsley was injured beforehand and that was what we had to play, I'd
Yeah,
probably go, okay, fair enough. If those are the options available, that's what we've got.
yeah.
But like you say, Halliday was sat on the bench, and yeah, listen, it's I don't. I'm not going to say that Halliday would have come on and done a better job than Rolls at left back because I actually thought Rolls was all right at left
No, no,
back.
no. Yeah, I. But like, you know, what I mean, like in terms of was of an obvious choice, straight swap, no like sort of
Yeah,
reshuffling at that point.
of course. Yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I totally agree. And I think the thing that confused me even more about it was that Civic was actually doing quite well at right back as
I
well.
know. Yeah.
So he shuffles Civic into the middle, brings on Ofaya, who, I know he's had his health issues and I know like the scare and all the rest of it, but I'm yet to see anything out of him. Like, and I don't mean that in a harsh way. I'm just yet to really see what he does. Like, he's an average centre back and he's not a right back. He's
Mm.
not mobile enough to be a right back, in my opinion. We had James Hill on loan last season, and I wasn't his biggest fan, but I think James Hill is a better player than Odell Ofaya in both positions, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, I agree. The swap should have been Halliday in for Kingsley, and I don't. As I say, the only reason I can imagine that he didn't do that was purely because of match fitness, maybe.
Mm.
But
I mean,
then the argument is, if he's not match fit, why is he on the bench?
right. Yeah, exactly, Alan.
And
But
yeah,
sorry, we're gone.
no, no, no. I was just going to say it disrupted the back four, and like you, I agree. The first half we were by far the better side. I thought we controlled it. We really, we kept going. We had a few chances, and we looked really good. And you could tell that injury to Kingsley just shook things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, it maybe would have made things easier if we just brought Halliday in,
Yeah.
minimize the disruption, keep things as they are, and just play Halliday. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I don't get paid to sit in the dugout at Hearts, and Stephen A. Smith obviously saw something.
Absolutely, Alan. As you said at the start, what do we know? So yeah, as
Mhm.
you said as well, we saw the first half relatively still look good, and got into the second half as well. And we could probably argue that the first big chance of the second half was the second goal from your favourite Alex Lowry. From what I saw, I mean, again, you could argue that it was like an own goal from a Deutsch, but I could not care less. Like I'll take any goal any day of the week. So yeah, what were your thoughts at that point after we scored the second goal? Did you think like every other Hearts fan? Yeah, we'll sit ahead, take this out rather comfortably, no problems.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I thought the second goal went in, and fair play to Lowry. Again, I said it a few weeks ago about Oda.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't shoot, you don't score, and that's what Lowry's done. He's had a
Mm-hmm.
shot and it's went in. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Lowry, and it'll take a lot more than a goal against Hibs to convince me. But he's getting there. He's getting there.
Okay, what
He's
does the boy
edging his
have to do?
way.
Honestly, what does he have to
Be
do?
on be on the winning side against Hibs. Be on the winning team. God damn it. But yeah,
Bless
no,
the
like
boy.
the second goal went in and I was delighted. You know, I
Mm.
Hibs under Nick Montgomery have looked a little bit better than they did
Yeah.
under Johnson, but it is still the same group of players. Let's be honest. I thought we were the better team by a distance, and I thought two was right.
Mm.
Nick Montgomery's unbeaten as Hibs manager, so it was one of those. Right, this is an opportunity. Let's keep going. Two, like everybody says, 2-0 is a dodgy lead. You need a third goal. You need
Yeah.
a third goal, and I do agree with that. Like even
Mm.
without the context of the Hearts Hibs game and how it played out, 2-0 is always a dodgy one. You
Oh,
know,
100%.
they said it. They said at halftime in the studio, they were talking about it, and they said, obviously it was 1-0 at that point. And they said, the next goal's crucial, the next goal's massive. If Hearts get it, they could go on and get a couple more and put the game really away.
Mm.
But yeah, it was a good goal, as I say. It was a typical shot deflection, hit off Doige's mug and went in, which was great. Um, just an enjoyable moment, a very
Mm.
enjoyable moment, and I did enjoy the Alex Lowry knee slide. I'll give him that.
There you go, sir. There you go. Well, before we do talk about the obvious, which like drastically was upset the game for like for our end as well. After he scored, now we could argue that was he was one of the better players on the pitch. Like was it for Hearts? Was it in the actual game? Was it Alex Lowry? And we were also talking about the questionable with the subs as well that Naismith has made. Some have came off, and we've absolutely like acknowledged that. But we've also like acknowledged the fact that some just are like a bit strange and odd. Why would you think? Now, I understand. Like again, like I messaged you this. The only kind of logical explanation for Naismith to bring Lowry off and then to put Benny in would be to have that extra man in the center of the park to also like to almost was a bolster that center of the park to have a bit more of a defensive shape. But in that same sort of context as well, like I don't know what you think, Alan, but in my mind, if you're 2-0 up, like against your the rivals, would you not just want to kind of keep that momentum going and to just constantly like try and apply like as much the pressure like as possible to just was it to see out the actual game, or did you agree with what Naismith did and to try and have like a bit more of a defensive shape?
See, this is interesting. This is
Right.
interesting, and I'd messaged you about this as well,
Mm,
and it was in reference to a a thread of tweets from Craig Fowler
mm,
about Naismith, and about it kind of stemmed from that substitution.
yeah.
And you know, it's like I said, 2-0 is a precarious lead. You're still kind of hoping that the opposition don't get the next goal because then 2-1 becomes a bit more of a game and it gives Hibs an opportunity. Stephen Naismith said when he got the Hearts job that the style that Hearts fans deserve is better than what we'd seen. Essentially words to that effect.
Yeah.
Essentially poking fun at Robbie Nielsen and his defensive mindset, shall we say, and saying, it'll change. There'll be an attacking front foot mindset, and we're going to be more on that front foot and taking more advantage and more initiative in our own play. That substitution, you would have been forgiven if you looked over at the dugout and Robbie Nielsen had made that substitution.
Yeah.
Because, listen, I love Stephen Naismith and I want it to work and I want to give him time and he'll get time. Like, I'm not going to turn this into another will he get sacked or will he not?
Mm.
Because that's not right. But it's it was such a frustrating substitution.
Right. Yeah.
But I can understand why he made it. I can understand why he took Lowry off. The explanation was he was tired and he'd run his race and he made a few poor decisions, which he did because some of his
Mm,
passes did go wayward. But yeah, again, like we said about the Halliday one, there were other options on the bench that
yeah.
wouldn't have required the shape to change as much as it did. And that's the bit that gets me.
Hmm. And could you like have argued like as you said at the start as well? I mean, could you have argued maybe that Ed Grant like some I could have been like sort of put in probably like again as a like for like swap.
Yeah. Well, you've got Grant and Boyce sat on the
Yeah,
bench, and
aye,
like he brought both of them on later. So yeah,
right.
I didn't understand why Benny was brought on. I know you said about the holding midfielders and trying to keep control and all that, and I get that, but it wasn't the right time for that substitution. Like that was not the right moment to change to that shape.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously going to be that debate, like saying like if the decision wasn't made from Naismith in terms of like changing the entire shape, the events that like occurred afterwards, you could argue maybe wouldn't like have happened, but obviously we've they got to talk about it, and it's the last thing that we'll talk about Hibs in this episode. So I like we've obviously seen Hearts throughout this season and throughout the last few where the amount of cheap goals that we give away just from switching off is remarkable. But in terms of it happen, literally in the space of 90 seconds, I've never
Yeah.
seen anything like that, especially like against Hibs as well. Like, I mean, it's genuinely no disrespect to Hibs, but was it when Hearts are 2-0 up, like in the derby, you expect them. Not all like there might be like some like was it the complications. You expect Hearts to see that out, but like obviously you do have to give what's a credit to Hibs, but like have you ever seen anything like that happen, Alan, in the space of 90 seconds and in the manner that it did just by switching off? And obviously as well, we've obviously got to talk about your main man. Was it Toby Sibbick as well, who arguably as well was at fault, not like completely solely, but in terms of the mistakes that he made, you could
Yeah.
probably argue that he might have been at fault for these the goals. What were your thoughts in that 96 down? Frustrating?
Yeah. I just didn't know what the
The
fuck had
most
happened,
frustrating.
to be
Let's
honest with
play.
you. Yeah, like it's so annoying because like the first one, I'll talk about the first one first, obviously. Benny gets the ball. Well, he doesn't get the ball. The ball gets to him, and he clears it straight to a Hibs player. And I'm thinking, right, we've changed the shape, we've changed how we're playing. Hibs clearly saw that and grew into the game because they
Mm-hmm.
did. They saw us taking off an attacker and bringing on a defensive midfielder and went, okay, Alex Lowry caused us problems all day. Thank fuck he's gone off. They grew into the game and you could see it. And as I say, for the first goal, Benny's clearance goes straight to Hibs player. It is well worked. Like there's a few quick passes, but and I said this on Twitter after it. Ofaya and Sibbick on the right hand side as the right sided centre back and the right back. It was like they'd never met before. Like there was no communication. There was nothing. Like, and you can't do that. You can't do that because as much as I don't rate Hibs because I don't, their biggest threats is that forward line.
Mm.
And, you know, the minute that you switch off and the minute that you give them a space, they can take advantage of it. And they did. As I say, it was Ofaya and Sibbick on that right hand side of defence is something that I hope is never repeated because it's not right. Like I love Toby Sibbick, as you know. I've already
Mm-hmm.
said what I think about Ofaya, but Toby Sibbick the last few weeks has looked good at right back. We put him into the middle. And I'm not saying that, he's not capable of playing at centre back because he is. He is a centre back by trade. But it was just one of those things, and you're just like, what are you doing? Like, how is that allowed to happen? They just get through so easily. And it's a good finish, but he's 5 yards out. He's not missing that, and
No.
you're just like, really? Okay. Right. We've given them a gift of a goal. Let's settle down. Let's keep it simple. Because we were still the better side. Like Hibs grew
Yeah.
into the game, as I say, but we were still in the lead. You're going, right. We've conceded a goal. It's not the end of the world. It's just one. Let's just settle it down and not do anything stupid. And we might nick a third. But
And then we
obviously,
did go something stupid, yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. And this is the thing. And it's for all the criticism that Naismith gets for his substitutions and for all the criticisms in the changing shapes and individual performances of our invisible captain, etc. The defending for that second goal was just criminal. Like, I don't know what Toby's trying to do. He's like outside of the foot, like back heeled it or like side it. Just
Just
no.
clear it.
Like,
Just fucking hoof it.
stick it. Yeah, stick it into the Gorgie stand. Like, stick it into the ultras section. Let them hold the ball for 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? It just baffles me. It's like, I mean, well, actually, it was the other end of the pitch, so ignore that. Just
Yeah, none of
batter it
that.
into
No.
one of the Hibs fans. Batter the ball into one of the Hibs fans. You know, that would have got a loud cheer if he knocked somebody out in the stand. But he just decides to just back heel it. And Ewan is obviously buzzing because he's just scored a goal. He's in the right place at the right time and he scores the second goal. And yeah, it's just a complete defensive clusterfuck. Like, I don't know
Couldn't
what
have said it
else
better
you can
myself,
say.
Alan.
Yeah, I don't know what else you can say about it. Like, as I say, Naismith has been criticised for certain things that happened in that game, and rightly so. But Naismith's not at fault for Toby Sibbick switching off. You know, Naismith's not on the pitch holding his hand, going, right, Toby, kick it now. You know, it's just basics, just the basics of defending. Like, when you're 2-1 down, you've just conceded a goal. That's what hurts more. Like, the first goal I can kind of forgive because in that moment it was probably coming. The second one is just so amateur. And I think it annoys me and it frustrates me more because I'm a fan of Toby Sibbick and I just think you don't need to do that, lad. Like, you shouldn't do that. Just, it's one of those things that Toby's been kind of prone to a few times, to be fair. He loves a
Hmm.
little kind of overplay sometimes at the back. And you're like, do you know what, Toby? When you need to hoof it into the stand, just hoof it into the stand. You know, Frankie Kent would have battered it over Tiny. It'd probably be sitting in my living room. You know, it's that's the difference. Like, no dicking about, no fucking around with the ball at the back. Just get rid of it. Like, we were clearly under pressure at that point. And I'm not saying Toby was the only one to blame because he wasn't. They all switched off. But Toby had a chance to clear it and he didn't. He literally passed it to a striker that scored a minute beforehand.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was 90 seconds of utter ridiculousness that
Hmm.
brought Hibs back level when if we'd just been organised and if we just kept composure, we would have been out of sight. We would
Hmm.
have been out of sight. And, you know, we could have been 4-0 up and Hibs get one back and you go, that's only one. You know, it's that's the annoying thing. And it's just, as I say, it really annoys me because it's Toby Sibbick and I feel bad for him, but he is prone to that occasionally.
Hmm.
And that's the worry because you're like, you didn't need to do that, lad. Just get rid of it. Just like it's it's one of those things, and you're just like, please just clear the ball. Just clear it. But you could see it coming. You could see it coming.
I know.
The ball comes across, and Toby just I don't know whether he miscontrols it. Like that's maybe me being kind and giving him an excuse. But yeah, just wrap your foot around it and get it away. Anywhere else but there. Like it's you said it yourself. We've been so prone to daft individual errors that have cost us goals. Like, but it's funny because we've actually got quite a good defensive record in the league this season.
I know.
But the stupid defensive errors cost us massively. And as I say, if we're 4-0 up and we're sitting here going, well, you know, we gave them one goal and finished 4-1, you go, do you know what? It's one goal.
Hmm.
It's not the end of the world. But at 2-0 up in a derby, we should not be drawing that game, especially the way it was going. Like,
Hmm.
Hibs had initiative for maybe 5 minutes, and they scored 2 goals in that 5 minutes. So, yeah, it was so deflating as well because you're like, it goes to 2-2, and you're thinking, what's going to happen now? You know, are we going to lose this? Like, are Hibs going to get that lift and go on and win it? I didn't think that was ever in danger as the game went on, but for that like 5 minutes after they scored that second goal, I'm thinking, fuck, see if we lose this game, like Naismith's going to need
Hmm.
personal protection to get him out that stadium because the fans wouldn't have
Literally.
let them out.
Literally,
But
man.
yeah,
I mean, genuinely, I don't have to add anything at all to that. Like, literally, like it's literally said it all. You know.
yeah,
Like after the second goal went in, my thoughts were exactly were like, are we actually going to like embarrass ourselves like drastically? And again, like much like you, as a Hearts fan, I don't rate Hibs, but in that kind of moment, once the second goal went in, obviously the momentum was with them at that point. So I thought this could actually happen, and
Yeah,
like the closing like sort of stages of that actual game. Obviously, we came that was a close as well. We hit the bar and the post as well. Well, actually was like unfortunate, but like like it did end was a 2-2 as we all know, but just to kind of like bring like the actual game like to a close. Obviously, like as we said at the start, we do plan to actually do a review thus far of this season. But where do you think Naismith is the kind of at like kind of right now? Because you know you talked about this not too long ago as well. I don't know if it was on here like or just between us two. He's not really had a statement win in terms like yeah, like granted we won like sort of what like 5-0 like against Aberdeen, but that's when they were playing utter garbage. But in that same sense, he's not beat Hibs since Plenty took over. Obviously, like he's not beat either was a Celtic or Rangers. So where do you think his head at, and where do you think in terms of the actual team itself? Because you sent me like an article this morning from was it Barry Anderson, of course. Like the amount of times that we've seen, like the dressing room talk, this and that, blah 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 blah, and players not actually playing for the shirt and like this and that. Where do you think we're at this moment? Because like it seems like a bit of a cliche, but we seem to be genuinely on and off, on and off. And like if this is going to be a the cutting theme throughout this year, you know, I know this might sound a bit like sort of as a drastic, but if we're going to be playing like this throughout the whole year, like they're going to be fighting for the top six at level, like at this rate. Never mind third. So just to kind of wrap things off, where do you think the team in Naismith like is at well the kind of right now, and do you think there's actually more the pressure on Naismith, even though we've got to like a semi final? Do you think now that adds more like sort of pressure because we've not had the beaten Hibs and in the manner like as well that we threw those points away?
definitely, definitely. Like, listen, I've seen Hearts play a lot worse in a derby and win than we did on Saturday.
Yeah.
You know, and like you said about the Naismith statement win and all the rest of it. I was having conversations with people about this. I can't remember if it was after the game or yesterday or wherever, but it's one of those things that a new manager needs that. You know, we can be promised good attacking football, that attacking philosophy, that attacking mindset, that we are Hearts and this is how we want to play. Doesn't matter who you are, this is how we're going to play, which is essentially what Naismith has been saying. When he was the tail end of last season. But that's all well and good, but you've got to get results. And there are fans, and like I say, we said it was it last week or whenever, well, last episode, talking about the fan protests and the unrest and stuff. That right now is being aimed at the board. It's being aimed at Anne Budge, and rightly so to an extent. It's not being aimed at Naismith yet. However, there are a lot of fans that are saying, I didn't want him in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's not his fault he's in the job, as I said previous episode, but he was never going to turn it down. But yeah, Naismith just needs that win. He needs that win to get more fans to go, right, we played really well, we dominated the game, and we won. And that's what Naismith is trying to guarantee, like with his words at least. We've not seen it yet. We've not seen it. We've not seen a complete performance. I think the Edinburgh Derby was the best Stephen Naismith 90 minutes that we've seen in terms of performance. I'm not
Mm.
going to deny that. I don't think, people will give Hibs credit. I don't think they deserve any of it. Literally, we gave them 2 goals in 2 minutes. But other than that, they didn't really do a great deal. So we were masters of our own downfall and giving them the draw that they didn't deserve. But you could see the way they celebrated after it. But I'm not going to criticise Hibs fans for that, because if it was Hearts at
No.
Easter Road and we nicked a 2-all draw when we didn't deserve it, we would have done exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So people calling those celebrations tin pot, I don't agree. It's a derby, it's a rivalry. You
Mm.
celebrate when you get anything against your rival. Um, but yeah, the jury's still out on Naismith for me, and I was praying he was going to get that win against Hibs. And as I say, when it went to 2-0, I'm going, right, this is it. This is perfect. Keep going. And then the changes happened. And then the momentum shifted. And then it just became another one of those Stephen Naismith games where we're just not quite really fully where he wants us to be yet. He'll get time. He'll get time, because we know what our board's like. They're not going to sack him tomorrow, despite what people probably want. And I'm not going to say he should be sacked tomorrow. I still fully back the manager and I still fully believe in him. But we need to start seeing some evidence of what he's trying to do. We saw it with the 2 away wins against County and Killie to get us to the semi final. That's brilliant. Getting to a cup semi final, trip to Hampden, that's amazing. But there needs to be more. And like I say, the biggest thing for me, if you're going to finish third in this league, you need to be consistent. You need to win games, even if you're winning 1-0, even if it's scrappy and you win 1-0, 2-1. You don't need to blow everybody away. You just need
Mm.
to win. And I think there are a lot of Naismith doubters out there, and I'm not going to sit here and say I disagree with them, because everybody's entitled to their opinions and everybody has an opinion. And, some people's opinions are different from others. That doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong, because that's not how it works. For me, though, there's little shoots of things. There's little shoots of things happening. But the issue continues to be injuries. We said it earlier, and it's going to sound like an excuse that I'm making for Naismith, but you take any team, and I mean any team, I include Celtic and Rangers in this. You take any team and you take out their first choice goalkeeper, their first choice left back, their second choice left back, their first choice right back, first choice centre back, first choice left winger, Barry Mackay, first choice right winger in Oda. You take any of those players out of any team in Scottish football, and they'd all struggle. And it's not an excuse for Naismith, because yeah, it's a fact. We have lots of
Yeah.
injuries. But yeah, it's you do get to a stage where you just go, what's happening here? Like, I really, really wanted them to win that game, obviously. And at 2-0 up, we shouldn't be drawing that game. Like, we should have shown the man management, the game management to win that game. And I'll lay the blame partially at Naismith's door, but I'm not going to blame him entirely, because that is a group of professional football players. If you switch off for even a minute in a derby, it doesn't matter if your opposition isn't playing well and hasn't done anything. If you switch off, you're opening yourself up to conceding a goal.
Mm.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Like I said before, Stephen Naismith doesn't run around the pitch holding hands with Toby Sibbick going, right, Toby, kick it now, right, get away. He stands on the sidelines and shouts at them all. Like, if you switch off, you're going to concede, and that's what happened. It's
Yeah.
just, again, I said at the start, 10 seconds in, I was ridiculously frustrated. I have calmed down since full time. It might not seem like that, but I have. And yeah, it's Naismith needs a statement win. And although we're not doing a preview, because we'll probably leave that till later on in a further episode or whatever, we've got Celtic, Rangers, Rangers in the Cup, and Livingston. That's the next 4 games. He needs to win the Livingston game, and there'll be fans out there saying he needs to win at Hampden.
Mm.
I don't disagree with that. Like we saw at the end of last season, we went to Ibrox and played well and got a draw right at the end. We need against Celtic and Rangers. Obviously, we've got Celtic at Tynecastle, so that gives a different dynamic to that game. But we need to see at least against the Old Firm. I'm not asking for Stephen Naismith to go and mastermind 6 points off of Celtic and Rangers, because realistically, that's not likely to happen. Let's be honest. But I want to see us putting performances in and saying, right, we're not going to be bullied because every time in the last few years, Hearts have played against Celtic and Rangers, we're beaten before we even get on the pitch.
Hmm.
I don't want that. I want to see, at the very least, a performance because We're all that. And Naismith needs that. He needs to be able to convince people to say, look at what I'm doing, look at what I'm trying to do. And he showed it in the Edinburgh Derby. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say he was totally wrong to do what he did, but the performance was good. We created a lot. We passed the ball well. We moved it well. Hibs barely threatened us. And when they did, we were equal to everything. It was a good performance. And I think that gets lost because we haven't won.
Hmm. Of course, Alan. I mean,
Anyway, I'm done now. That's my rant finished.
yeah, no, I mean, just to kind of wrap it up there, yeah, I think much like yourself, I've got faith like Naismith. You know, there has been a different side to Hearts in that sense, like from the like attacking aspect. However, as you was I said about, it's just not been consistent, and I think there is small cracks starting to show. But again, I'm not going to personally blame all of that like on him. You know, I've said it many a time where, like, like it's the same thing when the team is was playing well, like like the players get all the credit. When the team's playing shite, it always falls down at the manager's feet, which like is like it's a long discussion, but I think the things go was hand in hand, and I think in this kind of context, I think like it's the same. You can't blame everything at Naismith, because I think there have been some parts of the actual team where they haven't been playing well. But at the same time, as you said, there's been a lot of was a questionable things that Naismith has done on the actual pitch where you think, okay, where's this? I kind of had what to thinking like sort of coming from. But as you said as well, with the matches up ahead or the next four, it's going to be interesting. I think for the Rangers game away at Hampden, personally, we've not got anything to fear. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like it's a semi final. We don't have to play like Rangers game in terms of right there. What was it? What was it? Setting up like this. This is how we counter that. No, as you said, play our way. It doesn't matter what they're playing. Like
Yeah,
like you play with confidence and like you know what I mean, and that should go for all the teams. Like you know what I mean. Granted, I know that
of course.
you might have to have a slightly different story. Well, like when you're going to Celtic Park or Ibrox, but it's a semi final. Like fucking was to go after it. So in
Yeah,
that same sense, it's going to be like an interesting 2 weeks this pair. As we said at the start, we are going into an international break, so we are going to do a review thus far of this season next week. As we said, we do hope to have a few the guests on as well, so it'll be good to have them on. And obviously, again, we would love to hear your thoughts as well. If you think the cracks are starting to show with Naismith and the actual team itself, and how many the good results do you think will come out of the next four games, as we mentioned? So we would love to hear all that, and I'm sure Alan will put like a few more things onto Twitter as well. And so yeah, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Since I Was Young podcast. So once again, guys, thank you all for the watching as well. It was a great like appreciated and. If you wanted to subscribe, if you're not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, please feel free to do so, and you can get in there and contact with us through all these socials as well in the description. So until next week, we do hope you take care, and we will see you in the next one. So from myself and Alan, y'all take care. Bye for now.